All right, now for a component of this unit that is 8th grade material, and it is called a binomial proportion. It's a really fancy sounding name for something that looks really complicated that really is not all that complicated. It's just going to be adding a little extra step or steps to your solving process. And what that means is a binomial proportion means that you're going to have a constant that's going to be added or subtracted with the variable somewhere in the proportion. So the variable is no longer going to be isolated by itself. And let's take a look at this first example. 7 over n plus 5 equals 10 over 5. Now we're going to go through cross multiply, and I strongly encourage you to circle what you're multiplying. I'm going to use 2 colors to try and make it stand out a little bit easier. In this case, we are saying 10 times n plus 5. We aren't just saying 10 times n. We're not just saying 10 times 5. We're saying 10 times everything in the denominator. And then we're saying 7 times 5 on the other side. Now we have to go through the process of distributing. 10 times n is 10n, plus 10 times 5 is 50, equals 7 times 5, which is 35. Now we can solve this problem by subtracting 50 from both sides. And on the left, we are left with 10n, and on the right, we are left with negative 15. Now we can come in and divide both sides by 10. And your choices at this point are to either leave it as negative 15 over 10, to actually go through, or to simplify it and get negative 3 over 2, or to make it the decimal of negative 1.5. Your choice as to which one you would want to leave it, which form you would want to leave it in. Now let's take a look at the second one. 4 over m minus 8 equals 8 over 2. So under normal circumstances, you might be able to say, hey, I notice there's a relationship to get from left to right. But when you have that constant with that variable, it doesn't make it quite as easily. So go ahead and continue with the cross multiplying process. So we are saying 8 times m minus 8. And we are saying 4 times 2. We distribute the 8 to get 8m minus 64, and it's going to equal 8, because 4 times 2 is 8. Again, remember, we're multiplying 8 by m, and we're multiplying 8 by m minus 8, so it's by 8 times m and 8 times 8. It's not just m 8 times one of those with the or 8 times m and then minus 8. We have to make sure we distribute that 8 that's in the top, that's in the numerator, the second ratio, that we're by everything in the denominator of that first one. Now we can go through and solve the equation. We'll add 64 to both sides. And because we want to make that 0 pair, and we get 8m is equal to 72. And now we can come in and we can divide both sides by 8, because it's the inverse of multiplication, and we get that m is equal to 9. Now, if we wanted to check our answers, I'm going to check this one because at least we're dealing with whole numbers. Makes it a little easier. If we were wanting to check it, what we're wanting to know is 4 over 9 minus 8 equal to 8 over 2? Well, we know that 9 minus 8 is 1, so is 4 over 1 equal to 8 over 2? The answer is yes. We know this to be true, therefore we know that, hey, we solved it and got the right answer. So it is still possible to check your answer with these. Going on to the third example, x minus 3 over x equals 9 over 10. So we go through and still cross multiply. Yes, I know there are variables all over the place, left and right in here, well, top and bottom, but that's not going to change what we do. So we have 9 times x, and we have 10 times x minus 3. We go through the distribution process, and we get that 9 times x is 9x equals 10 times x is 10x minus 10 times 3 is 30. Our goal is to get all of the x's together. We got to combine like terms. So we're going to take away 10x from both sides to make that 0 pair so that we can go ahead and combine all of our like terms. 9x take away 10x is a negative 1x equal to a negative 30. Don't forget about that minus sign with that 30. That makes it negative. Now, think back to equations when we had a negative x. That was like our star. And remember, we're always searching to find x. So if a negative x or a negative 1x is a negative 30, positive x would have to be positive 30. In order to prove this, let's check our answer. What we're wanting to know is 30 minus 3 over 30, in fact, equal to 9 over 10. Well, 30 minus 3 is 27 over 30, and is that equal to 9 over 10? A couple of ways to find out. To get from 27 to 9, we divide by 3. If we divide 30 by 3, we end up with 10. So, okay, that works. We also can cross multiply. 30 times 9 is 270. 27 times 10 is 270. Either way we check it, we end up with the right answer. So, go us. All right, now for the last complicated looking problem. We cross multiply, and we know we're going to have to distribute because we're saying 6 times all of that stuff in the numerator. 6 times 7n plus 9. So, distribute. And 5 times 9. Let's go about solving or distributing. So we get 6 times 7n plus 6 times 9. So 6 times 7 is 42n plus 6 times 9 is 54 equals 5 times 9 is 45. Now we can solve our equation. Make your 0 pair with 54 by taking it away from both sides. And we get 42n is equal to negative 9. Come in and divide both sides by 42. And we get that n is equal to negative 9 over 42. Now, we can simplify this fraction by 3. Negative 3 over 14. But this is not one of those you'll want to make a decimal because it is not a pretty decimal. It's a pretty ugly looking thing with a lot of numbers that repeat. So negative 9 over 42 simplifies to negative 3 over 14. Leave it as that. Don't take that extra step and those extra headaches to make it a decimal. It's not worth it. And so that is how you solve binomial proportions. It's a big fancy word with a lot of extra work, or a lot of work, because you have to distribute and remembering to do that distributive property. But generally speaking, it's not too difficult, and I know y'all can do it. You'll notice I didn't check the answers for the first and the last, and that's because they weren't integers, meaning that it was going to be a lot more difficult to go through the process of checking. Feel free to ask teacher the next day or the day after you watch this about how to check with those, and they'll be glad to show you in person, but overall, it just would have taken us a little bit longer than you probably want to check those. So, well done.